Scrooge woke again with a jump, just as the clock was striking. A blaze of light shone in the next room. He heard a voice calling him. Scrooge put on his slippers and shuffled to the door. He was astonished to see that the room was decorated with holly, ivy, and mistletoe, and there was a huge fire in the grate, heaped up on the floor. To make a kind of throne was a roast turkeys, geese, joints of beef, sausages, mince pies, fruit, Christmas puddings, and pyramids of fruits. On top of the heap sat a jolly giant, holding a torch shaped like a horn of plenty. "Come in, man, and get to know me," said the giant. "I am the ghost of Christmas present." The spirit was dressed in a deep green robe edged with a white fur, and wore a holly wreath on his brown curly hair. "I know you have come to do me good," said Scrooge humbly. "Please take me with you and show me your message." The spirit took him out into the streets, where people were doing their last-minute Christmas shoppings. Church bells rang out. Poor people who could not afford the fuel to cook at home were carrying their dinners to their baker's shop. The spirit sprinkled a few drops from his torch in blessing on the poor folks' dinners. They came to a very small house. It belonged to Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk. The spirit gave this house a special blessing. The Cratchits were all dressed up in honor of Christmas. Mrs. Cratchit and her daughters had shabby dresses, but they had decked them out with bright ribbons. Young Peter was sticking a fork into a bubbling saucepan of potatoes, while one of the girls laid the table. "Here come Father and Tiny Tim," cried the children as Bob, with Tiny Tim on his shoulder, came through the door. Tiny Tim carried a crutch and had an iron frame to his leg. Just then two young Cratchits came charging in from the baker's, bringing the goose on a tray. Mrs. Cratchit heated up the gravy. Peter mashed the potatoes. The girls dished up the apple sauce and put out the warm plates. Everyone sat around the table and Bob said grace. Then Mrs. Cratchit plunged her carving knife into the breast, and the smell of sage and onion stuffing gushed out. They all said there never was such a tender, tasty goose, and there was enough for everyone. Next it was the turn of the Christmas pudding, which had been boiling away in the kitchen copper. Mrs. Cratchit carried it in blazing with brandy and with a sprig of holly on top. No one even dared to hint that it was rather a small pudding for such a big family. At least they all sat around the fire eating roast chestnuts and drinking Christmas toast. "I wish a Merry Christmas to us all, my dear," said Bob. "God bless us." "God bless us, everyone," added Tiny Tim. He sat beside his father, who held his thin little hand. "Spirit," whispered Scrooge, "tell me if Tiny Tim live." "I see an empty chair," said the spirit, "and beside it a little crutch. If these shadows do not change, Tiny Tim will not see another Christmas. But why should you care? Let him die. There are too many poor people." Hearing his own words, Scrooge was silent with shame. Then the spirit showed Scrooge what Christmas meant to people in lonely, faraway places, to miners below the earth, to men in the lighthouses surrounded by sea and storm, to sailors on board ship in the dark night singing carols as they worked. Suddenly Scrooge heard a jolly laugh. It was Fred, his nephew. He was having a Christmas party and they were playing a guessing game. Fred had to think of something and could only answer yes or no to questions about it. Yes, he was thinking of an animal, a savage, disagreeable animal. Yes, it lived in London. No, it wasn't in a zoo. No, it wasn't a horse or a donkey or a tiger or a cat or a bear. Fred laughed so much he almost fell off the sofa. At last his plump sister-in-law strode out. I know who it is. It is your Uncle Scrooge. So it was. They all drank a toast to Uncle Scrooge, who have answered them, but the spirit took him away again. Gradually the spirit grew smaller and smaller. His brown head turned so grey. Is a life so short? asked Scrooge. Yes, it ends at midnight. Then Scrooge noticed something hiding in the two folds of the spirit's robe. There were two children sheltering there, a boy and a girl, very thin, half-starved and ragged. These are the children of the world, who have no parents and no one to make a Christmas for them, said the spirit sadly. Have they nowhere to go? asked Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Said the spirit, turning on him with his own words. Are there no workhouses? The clock struck 12. Scrooge looked about for the spirit, but it was gone. Instead, he saw a solemn figure clad in a dark hood and cloak, gliding like a mist over the ground towards him. It was the last spirit.